Good Monday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about. We'll also talk a little bit later about the Cavaliers. Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, will be along to join us. NFL announced its salary cap numbers for next season as expected. A pretty significant bump, almost $225 million. That's up from $208 million this season. People that have a lot more time than we do have taken a look at the Browns' cap space, including rollover. It should be about $14 million. This, according to Jack Duffin. If they cut JJ3 post June 1st, that gives them another 9.7. They can restructure Watson at 35, Garrett at almost 13, Teller at 9, Bitonio at 7. 8 draft picks will cost him 1.8. The result is almost $60.5 million of cap space to play with to fill out the roster. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, a Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Scott, Andrew Berry was pretty confident at his end of the year press briefing that he would be able to do anything that he needed to do. That shows you how you get the money that you want to sign the pieces that you might need.
Yeah, for sure. You know, in the $16 million jump, while they probably expected it, that makes a difference too, right? I don't know how many players that winds up being in free agency or whatever, but that's a significant chunk of money to add to the salary cap. So I think the Browns have enough flexibility. I think they have enough rollover cap space. The cap increase helps. And while you can't do everything you would want to do if you had, let's say, a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, you can still do plenty.
Yeah, without question. And again, the guys in the front office know how to manipulate the salary cap. That's never been in question. Some good news on the field as well. You tweeted this out. Wyatt Teller added to the Pro Bowl roster, so he joins Joel Bitonio, Nick Chubb, and Myles Garrett. So 2 of the Browns' offensive linemen, part of that Pro Bowl roster. It kind of goes to show you with 4 guys on the Pro Bowl roster, this roster is not far from being what would be considered a legitimate contending roster.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's good, it's a good recognition for Wyatt Teller. He fought through a calf injury. I don't think he played as well as he had the previous 2 years, but is still, respected and still played at somewhat of a high level, and then gets to go with Joel and Myles and Nick, like you said. That's what I keep coming back to, Dave. When we talk about, how close is this roster, how close is this team, there's a lot of good players, right? And maybe they didn't live up to expectations or potential, and the team certainly did not. But you mentioned those 4 guys. You got Denzel Ward. Amari Cooper played at a really high level. David Njoku had a good year, and I think could continue to get better. There's Ethan Posick. Jack Conklin's a good player. Like, there's good players on this roster and high-end talent on this roster. The Browns just need to make more of it.
Yeah, and the guys that are – there seems to be a gap. There aren't those guys that are just solid, dependable guys that do the job at the NFL level. That was what was missing. You had the high end, and you had guys that just weren't quite cutting it.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. And some depth issues, right? At certain positions, you saw them get into depth at linebacker due to all the injuries. Defensive tackle was never deep enough. Defensive end was probably not deep enough. So, yeah, you have – there's guys in the middle, but not a ton of them. I think a Taki probably fits there. And then you need your younger guys to take jumps, right? Whether that's JOK, Greg Newsome II, guys that you drafted high that start playing at that Pro Bowl level, because that, when you draft them there, that is at least some part of the expectation.
All right, I know you did a season wrap-up that you posted earlier today. Take us through off-season to-do list and some of the other things that you detailed in that article.
Yeah, I went through best and worst, moments and players. I had Bitonio as my top player. Anthony Schwartz was at the bottom of the roster just because he dealt with so much injuries and drops and then mental health issues, finishes the season on IR, just hasn't had the impact that the Browns hoped he would. And then, the good moments, the bad moments, we know what those are. And I think the to-do list starts with the roster. You know, I mean, it's always what you focus on, right? They took care of defensive coordinator already by making the move from Joe Woods to Jim Schwartz. Now it's about filling out the roster, and a lot of it's on defense. It's getting 2 D tackles, in my opinion, 1 standout defensive tackle, getting another big-time defensive end opposite Myles Garrett. You know, do you have to make a move at safety? I think that's interesting. And then receiver, right? You got Amari Cooper, you got Donovan Peoples-Jones, you know, David Bell and Michael Woods, and Anthony Schwartz. But you need another guy, and whether that guy's the 2 or the 3, you know, you can figure that out with Peoples-Jones. But it needs to be, in my opinion, someone with a bunch of speed that can threaten the defense vertically and horizontally, right? Those jet sweeps, the shallow crosses, even the bubble screens, where if you have that ability to just break away, it makes a lot of difference.
You know, you mentioned the defense. How big of a factor do you think Jim Schwartz can be in getting some of those young? In other words, I kind of got the feeling that they were asking guys to do things that weren't their strength, and that's kind of crazy. I think Jim Schwartz is going to have guys that, all right, these guys can stuff the run, so we're going to put them down, put them in running situations. These guys, not great against the run, but we're not going to ask them to try to play against the run.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that, for sure. I mean, the guy's got a great track record, right? Head coach, defensive coordinator, 14 years in this league, highly ranked units throughout his time. So I think that is something. It's going to be interesting to see, Dave, what they do. Like, I assume they're going to add, 3 like quality defensive linemen, like I just mentioned. So, but then do you count on Schwartz if you can't do that, right? If you only add 1 D tackle in one end, then do you say to Schwartz, all right, you got to make it work with a new defensive tackle, Jordan Elliott, Perry and Winfrey, and Tommy Togiai, right? And maybe that's what they say. They say, hey, we're not going to be perfect across the roster. There's not the money to do that under the salary cap. So figure it out. And the same could be said at safety, right? But to your point about putting guys in good positions, I think that starts with a guy like, I think, a Perry on Winfrey right away. If he solves his maturity issues, then how can you best use him? Because I do think there's talent there, and disruptive talent. It can be. JOK, right? How do you use him at linebacker to get the most out of him? Schwartz talked about playing fast and aggressive, and that's what JOK wants to do. So maybe he can free him up, take more off his table or more off his plate, because that's one of the things that players said at the end of the year was it felt like Joe Woods, not that his system was overly complicated, but they didn't have just the freedom to go play. And, and I think Schwartz, his goal is to give them that freedom.
Yeah, and I would agree. The one of the interesting things he said was a high school coach will be able to draw up what we're doing schematically. It's just about communication and then letting them free. And that, kind of anxious to see that. I know you also wrote an article about this. Defensive line play, improved defensive line play. Is that the priority, you think?
I do. And there's questions at free safety. Obviously, I think we're going to talk about that. But to me, it starts with the D tackles and D end. And part of that is just the nature of football, right? It starts in the trenches. But a lot of it is Jim Schwartz and his history of having big-time defensive lines in front fours. If you go back to his days with the Titans, the 1 year he had in Buffalo, they were studs across that line. His time in Philly, it's just a track record. He had guys in Detroit, too, when he was a head coach. So I think you draw all of that together. I talked to Robert Smith, a former defensive lineman that played for Schwartz, and he said, yeah, I mean, that's just his belief that it all starts up front. So with that being said, then you got to go do it, right? You got to figure out a way to be better. And part of that is his scheme, that freedom, but a lot of it is roster construction, because maybe the line would have been better with Schwartz this year, but I still think there were deficiencies at tackle and at end, and then you're taking away Jadeveon Clowney on top of that, that no matter how good his scheme was or how good a coach he is, you can't make up for a huge lack of talent.
Yeah, I agree. The defensive tackles and the linebackers, they did not mesh the way that they necessarily need to in a defense. All right, before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I am concerned about the Browns getting rid of Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome is a shutdown corner like Hanford Dixon. He can chase and some of the other great receivers. Now that we have a defensive coordinator, they can put him in his right position. The same thing they did with Jedrick Wills, putting him at the left tackle instead of the right tackle. I'm just concerned with the Browns because of the owner. We need those picks that they gave up to get Watson. They're going to end up trading a lot of trying to get the picks back, and that's going to deplete the Browns. Thanks for taking my call.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, we kind of threw out the idea, in order to acquire talent, the Browns are going to have to give up something of value. They do have three corners, and again, Newsome doesn't want to play the slot, but in Jim Schwartz' defense, it may be more, all right, they're playing three wides. Newsome, Emerson, and Denzel Ward, you guys are going to go disrupt this at the line of scrimmage.
It's going to be interesting to see how they handle that, because you mentioned he doesn't want to play slot, and he said that at the end of the year, right? He doesn't want to play exclusively slot. Well, he wants to play more outside. He's like, if I have to go inside, that's fine, but I think he wants to follow a guy around, right? Start outside, and if the guy goes inside, follow him, as opposed to I'm outside on first down and inside every time they go three wides. But then somebody's got to play that spot, and it's probably not Denzel Ward. Is Martin Emerson too big to play every down in the slot? I think that's worth asking. So that's a question that the Browns have to decide. Now, I get the fans' concern about possibly trading him, because you're right. You deal from a position of strength. If you only need a slot guy, can you find a different guy than Greg Newsome? It's interesting, but I keep going back to, you need three good corners in this league, right? And I'm not sure the Browns have that third guy ready to step up if it's not Newsome, Emerson, and Ward. So I would expect him to be back. And then for me, the question is, how do they use him? And maybe he's just got to suck it up, do whatever the team says. Hey, this is the role we need you to play, and he's not really in a position to fight that. So I think that's a really fascinating thing to watch during the offseason and even into training camp next year.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll turn our attention a little bit to the offense when we return. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, guys. My name's Nathan. I grew up in Piketon, Ohio, lifelong Browns fan, as long as my father, Bernie forever. My comment in question is, what if in this offseason we go sign a great safety like Jesse Bates? And then why don't we go a little cheaper on the D-line and go for getting Larry Hogan Jovi back, because I think he would thrive in Schwartz's defense, and even sign an older fella like Ndamukong Suh, because I watched him in the NFC Championship game, and he still plays very well and would be a great rotational defensive player, defensive tackle. And then with that second-round pick, we find our slot receiver, and I think we have a bright future if we would consider something like that. Go Browns! Woo, woo. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, that might be the way they go. I would add they probably are going to try to sign an edge guy that might be a little higher priced. But Suh is a guy that had success with Jim Schwartz. who was looking to come back and did sign with the Eagles. Slot receiver, I'm with you. I want a guy that eats up space.
Yeah, I kind of like that plan from the caller. You're right about the end. You got to mention the end. To me, that's a huge priority, and I think it'll cost you some money. You probably go find a guy like Clowney. You can sign for a year or two, has experience. I like that more than a rookie. I'm okay with the slot guy being a rookie, as long as he's got the speed. Now, it's a question, can he come in and contribute right away? That's a big question, but I'm okay with that idea. We see rookie receivers have success lately. To me, the question there raised by the caller is, do you spend that big money on safety or defensive tackle? And, the Browns front office, their default is to spend it on safety, right? We saw it with drafting Grant Delpit high. We saw it with paying John Johnson III big money. And they haven't done that at D tackle. I just don't know if that philosophy shifts with Jim Schwartz. Or
Jim Schwartz may feel like he can get this guy at this price I can work with. That is D tackle is that's his wheelhouse.
Yeah, you're right. And there might be guys out there, Sue, I think the Browns didn't think Sue could play. And it's interesting because he showed up yesterday. I don't know what kind of season he had when he finally signed with Philly, but he certainly showed up yesterday. But he was out there all year, and the Browns made a conscious decision that he was not a significant enough upgrade.
This is also kind of interesting. This is from Tony Grossi, Browns beat reporter, says, take a good look at the Eagles offense, Browns fans. It's the template for Deshaun Watson next season. All right, along those lines, though, the average amount of money paid for a running back, the starting running back on each Super Bowl team, Sanders 1.3, Pacheco on his rookie deal, and he was a seventh rounder, so not even $1 million a year. Nick Chubb will make $10.85 million in 2023 and $12.2 million in 2024. And I only say that because you can't pay everybody. But back to the original point, I can see the thought behind the Eagles' offense kind of being the template with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I do too. Now, I don't think they'll run Deshaun Watson as much as the Eagles run Jalen Hurts. Hurts is thicker, I don't think he's as good a passer as Deshaun Watson showed in his time with the Texans. I'm not taking anything away from Hurts, but, he didn't play great yesterday. Not that he's not a good passer, but, I think his strength is probably as a runner. Watson led the league in passing in 2020. So I do think there's a difference there. But the emphasis on the run, the threat of a quarterback run, the RPOs, the zone read stuff, all the things you saw yesterday, I think the Browns started to integrate at the end of last season and will only do more with the full year of Deshaun Watson. Now, the running back money, it's fascinating because it didn't matter who the Eagles had in there. Their running backs were going to have big gains and score touchdowns. And I think at some level, Kevin Stefanski and even Andrew Berry and probably Bill Callahan think the same way, that we could plug and play guys. But Nick Chubb just changes that equation. And they inherited Nick Chubb. They chose to repay him because he's everything you want in a player, how hard he works, his dedication, all of it. And he's just a guy you can't give up on, even though if you design like your perfect salary structure, it would not be a running back making $10 million.
Yeah, it's just interesting. If you're paying Nick Chubb that, you got to find a place to not pay somebody quite as much somewhere else. And right now, the Browns are paying a lot of guys big contracts, so that'll be interesting to see. This is also interesting. Dogs by Nature. One free agent from the Chiefs and Bengals the Browns should sign. And these two would fit with what you and I have talked about. They're going to go Mecole Hardman, who's been banged up and hurt, but he is the type of guy that, you get the ball to him underneath. Hasn't had the production that you thought he might with Hill being gone, but he is the type of guy that can threaten a defense both vertically and horizontally. And then for the Bengals, a name we keep hearing, Jesse Bates, and in his post-game press conference, it sounds like he realizes he might not be back. The quote that sticks out from him is, "I can't afford to leave $10 million on the table." So it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, the receiver, I kind of like the idea of pairing a relatively cheap free agent with maybe that second-round draft pick, right? Both similar skill sets. So therefore, you have some insurance. You're not just throwing it on the rookie to say, okay, you're going to be our third guy and in the slot and going to have to go make a bunch of plays. So I kind of like that idea. I don't think Hardman will be super expensive on the market. And then Bates, it's really intriguing. The issue there is, will you pay him? Will you make him the highest paid salary in the game? And I don't know if they will. I don't know if they feel like that's where they will spend their salary cap money. But he's certainly a guy that has shown that he can be around the ball. Schwartz is high safety, has to be able to go sideline to sideline. I think he can do that. He's only 25. So there's a lot to like there. It's going to come down to money and how he fits into that structure. But again, if you could take a guy away from the best team in your division and add him to yours, and he's one of their top, 6 best players, I like that idea.
Before I let you go, that free safety is every bit important. I won't say as important as the defensive tackles because it's probably not, but it is important in that defensive scheme that we expect Schwartz to play, because it's got to be the guy that makes sure you don't get beat deep.
Yeah, it really is. And, I think we're kind of working under the assumption that John Johnson doesn't return. I don't know if that's guaranteed. I don't think they're going to pay him the $13 million he's due this year, but maybe they can restructure. Maybe there's a pay cut to be had there. And then you don't have to go fill that position if Jim Schwartz looks at the film and says, this guy can do what I need him to do. But it's an interesting debate because I don't think you can ignore defensive end. So then for me, it comes, okay, maybe you have one extra pile of money that goes to D-tackle or safety, and I don't know which way the Browns would go there.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle, Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for the time and the insight, Scott. Great stuff.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. Always good stuff, BrownsZone.com on the internet. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Tyvis Powell, straight ahead. We can continue talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Maybe cliche, but there's no I in team. The only identity that matters is we. The collective effort to love thy neighbor is needed now more than ever. The responsibility behind pronouns such as I, me, and mine impact we, us, and ours. So understand that you make all the difference in the team. He, him, her, or she can't disturb our peace, since we control our destiny as student athletes. This is the power of pronouns.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi. My concern with the Browns is the owner is the head of the snake, and everyone else seems to get the blame instead of Haslam. Haslam has been the one that's been having the players traded, our top players, lining his pockets, and the Browns go nowhere. That's my concern. And also players like Miles Garrett, all of them is going to be disgruntled, and they're going to want out. And until we can own our own team like the Packers, we're going nowhere. Thank you.
Appreciate all of the voicemails. Tyvis, let's welcome in Tyvis Powell, analyst on the Browns radio network. Tyvis, the Packers were grandfathered in as owned by the city. That ain't happening. You're going to have billions with a B to own an NFL franchise, and the Packers they will leave that alone. So that city ain't ever going to own another team. It'll be Green Bay, and that's it. I get when a team's not winning, you always blame the coach, the owner, the quarterback. The one thing I'll say about Jimmy Haslam, he's been willing to spend the money to keep talent when he has it. That's an important thing.
That is important, and that's something that people need to take into consideration. You know, these billionaires, it's a lot of places where, you know, players don't feel loved. They feel like it's just a working environment. I mean, with Jimmy, at least, you know, you see Deshaun and them taking vacations out and, you know, trying to get that team bonding. He's showing that he's willing to do whatever it takes to try to bring a winning culture here. I mean, obviously, you know, it's talks about the stadium getting redone and all kind of things. So you got to at least give him credit for doing that. You know, maybe some of the decisions that he's made hasn't been the greatest, but at least, you know, he's invested and he's committed to trying to win in the city.
Yeah, I would agree. And some of the decisions early, he was trying for a quick fix, and it appears that he's gotten away from that. All right, you're a former defensive back. What are your thoughts about Jim Schwartz, the defense he runs, and the hire the Browns made? And then what do the Browns need to give him to run that defense?
Well, I think that it's a home run hire. I mean, you got a guy in there. Obviously, if you listen to J3's closing or exit interview, you know, he was talking about how there wasn't a lot of energy, you know, from Joe Woods. You know, kind of he'll basically give you the game plan, and you know, it wasn't a lot of motivation behind it. Obviously, with Jim Schwartz, you're getting a guy who was a former head coach. You know, a guy that if you listen to him, you'll be successful. Obviously, this guy won the Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator. So that automatically is going to get the attention of the players right there. What do I think they need to make this defense work? Obviously, the glaring issue is defensive tackle. You notice that if you look at his resume, when he was a DC, all of his defensive tackles were either Pro Bowl or All-Pro type players. I like Perrion. I like the way Perrion finished this season. I think they need to pair him up with a vet, some guy that can get it done in the middle. Obviously, you know, with Jim Schwartz, he'll cater to trying to get that defensive tackle spot to be a Pro Bowl type of level. Also, when you look at him and the Eagles, you look at the fact that they had a Malcolm Jenkins there. And when I look on this roster, I don't know who that guy would be. So I would look to trying to add a guy like that. A free agent that comes to mind is a guy by the name of Jimmy Ward, who me and him happen to have the same agent. And Jimmy Ward could be a guy that's just like a Malcolm Jenkins, a guy that can just cover pretty much any position you need, wide receiver, tight end, or running back.
As a former defensive back, the scheme usually puts guys up tight on the line of scrimmage and tries to make wide receivers' life miserable at the line. As a defensive back, how much do you like that type of defense?
Well, when I played, that was what I preferred, because you want to get your hands on these receivers. You know, people think that just because receivers are fast, that you can't stick with them. But if you get your hands on them and you can control them at the line, it puts you on top of the route. It puts you in control of him. He can't get all the way to 100% speed if you're on top of the route or if you hand fighting with him the whole way. So I personally like that. However, it is a big risk and a small reward. If you miss at the line, you know, you can see a guy running down the field by himself. But I like the way that our corners play. I think they're better as press man-to-man. When you think of Denzel, you think of Genu, and you think of Martin Emerson. You know, all of those guys do well when they get their hands on their guys at the line of scrimmage. So I think that they will be for this 1,000%, especially if you tie in that pass rush.
Yeah, doesn't that seem to play to the strengths of those three in particular? Those three?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That was my read of it. I just wanted to run that by you. How important is a free safety in that? And you kind of got at that with, if somebody gets back, how important is the free safety, and does that guy exist on this roster, do you think?
So if you got a free safety, and we're running a lot of man because Jim Schwartz likes to run a lot of man. So if you're running man, you need one of those free safeties. You need a fast guy, one of those guys that can get sideline to sideline, just in case somebody does miss at the line of scrimmage, you got a guy who can erase that, a guy who can fly from the middle of the field and, help you out on the deep ball if need be. Do we have that guy on the roster? I don't think we have a potential or a natural free safety. I think that J3 is a box safety that's playing in the post. It would be something that I think that the Browns should look into getting. Getting a guy who can run sideline to sideline. Don't get me wrong, playing in the post can be boring, but I was always taught when I was playing post safety, we don't need you until we need you. When we need you, we really freaking need you.
Yeah, I hear you. If you miss, you see that a lot. So
you are the savior.
Yeah, I got you. Do you think this defense will help showcase Myles Garrett and the way Jim Schwartz plays? Can it, I don't want to say eliminate, can it lessen the amount of double teams that he's going to see, do you think?
So I had this conversation on Twitter earlier today with somebody. I think they need a guy. It was a guy by the name of Kyle Williams, I think his name is. He played for Buffalo back in 2016, 2017. Everybody loved him. Any DN that played next to him loved him because he was able to take on double teams. He would basically free up, defensive ends. I think that the Browns need a guy like that. Somebody that maybe he's not a game wrecker, but he understands that, if I am aggressive and I cause havoc, it's giving Myles Garrett the one-on-one. Obviously, if Myles is in a wide nine technique to begin with, a lot of double teams are going to come to the defensive tackle first, and they'll kind of push off to get to Myles. So that guy needs to be effective, and I think Myles would appreciate that. If it's a guy who's going to allow me to go one-on-one with tackles all day long, then sign Myles up for that every day of the week.
Tyvis Powell, analyst from the Browns Radio Network, and I can step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at some free agents as well. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tyvis Powell from the Browns Radio Network. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello. I had a question about a defensive tackle that we should trade for. It's Kalen Saunders from the Chiefs, number 99. He's a big boy on the defensive line. He reminds me of like a Jordan Davis kind of. In my opinion, I think we should go trade for him, or just if he hits free agency, which I think he might be. It would be nice to go pick him up because he has a defensive tackle problem. We probably contain Perion Winfrey, but I think that Kalen Saunders would be a very good fit to our defense. This year, he had 48 tackles, 26 assists, and 3.5 sacks, and he's been pretty good throughout his career. I just wanted to know if y'all thought if this is a good move or not, or whatever other defensive tackles we can go get. Thank you, and bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tyvis, a bigger defensive tackle, a guy that absorbs double teams. Do you like the way our fan is thinking there?
I definitely love the way that they're thinking right now. I think that would be a great move. It's a veteran guy who can pair up with a younger guy like Perion Winfrey. That's a pro that's getting his job done. Perion could probably learn a couple of things from him, and those two together could be effective. Like I said, Perion came on strong in those last couple of games. He was able to get in that backfield and get some pressure. You got another guy next to him that's taking on double teams. Put him and Myles Garrett on the same side at all times, and I think we got something going there.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, this is from Dog Pound Daily. 4 first-year Browns who will be gone in 2023. They say one of the edge rushers, Chase Winovich. Number 3, another one on that defensive line, tackle Taven Bryant. Number 2, Jacoby Brissett. And number 1, Ethan Posick. Let's start with the defensive linemen. I could see, Thomas, both Winovich and Bryant being back as rotational pieces. I don't think they're going to be starters, but Bryant's a guy that gets a little bit of penetration as a pass rusher, and Winovich is a guy that, again, if you're going to sub him in as a rotational guy in past situations, he may be able to give the two other guys that might be ahead of him a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Winovich one. I think that if you're coming in with Jim Schwartz and you're running a wide nine, that's catered to a guy like Winovich, a guy who's just a pure pass rusher. Maybe he's not a every down DN, but he's a guy that's certainly on third downs you want in there. He creates mismatches, and he just is very effective with his hands. I mean, that's what made him special. As far as Taven Bryan goes, I mean, he hasn't had the best season, but you always need pieces because the guys that's behind, Perrion, and who we don't really have the depth at defensive tackle. So we're going to need guys that's in there. Clearly, there was a bunch of misses that we've made in the draft and a bunch of young guys that we were dependent on that haven't taken that step. You need at least a veteran in there that has some presence. I mean, he wasn't great all year, but it was some plays where he kind of, got a little penetration in there. So you need a guy who has done it and is a pro.
For the other two, I think Jacoby Brissett will probably get a look as a 1 or 2 year starter, and he'll get a decent contract. And Posick may have played himself right out of the Browns' price range because he was pretty good as a starter this year.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. I think Jacoby Brissett, he's earned himself at least the right to start for some team next year. I mean, he handled himself really well. If he came back to the Browns, nobody batted out. We take him all day long, but I think he plays so well that he deserves at least an honest look at starting it for another team. As far as Ethan goes, you're right. I think he definitely played himself out. And on top of that, they will get Nick Harris back. And going into this season, Nick Harris was the guy that was the starter that was slotted to start. So I don't see them bringing Ethan back, especially for the price tag that he's going to carry.
All right, we're going to take a look at some free agents. These are it was from an article, one free agent from each team the Browns could target to improve their roster, according to Browns Wire. So from the Panthers, they got a defensive lineman, Matt Ioannidis. Bengals, we got Jesse Bates. We've already talked about him quite a bit. Defensive lineman from the Broncos, Draymond Jones. That's a local guy from St. Ignatius High School.
I played with Draymond. I'd be all for that.
All right. Arden Key, edge rusher from the Jaguars. And then another familiar name to Browns fans, Larry Ogunjobi, a defensive tackle from the Steelers. Let's do, since you're familiar with Draymond, is he the kind of guy that you think could really help the defensive line and play and do what Jim Schwartz needs?
So the thing about Draymond is a really good player, really good football player. But the thing that Draymond has over all of those other names on that list is the fact that Draymond is from Cleveland. So you want a guy that it would matter a lot to. This guy's grown up watching the Browns. He understands that the Browns haven't been in the best situation. And if he could be the key piece that's missing to help this organization go to the playoffs and win a Super Bowl, he'd be down for that just because it's his city. So when he goes in there to play or when he's doing workouts, he'll work. It's in his mind to work a tad bit harder because it means more because it's his city. It's where he's from. He wants to see it do well. So I think that's what Draymond got going in his situation there.
All right. If the Browns could only sign one higher-priced free agent, what position would you address with it? So you get one big name, big splash. Where are you going with our owner's money?
If I could get wide receiver, if you look at the draft for the past couple of years, people have been hitting. These wide receivers coming out of college has been doing really well, transitioning to the pros. So I think you can handle it there. However, depending on the name of the wide receiver, and his production, especially at the slot, that could be a huge thing, especially for Deshaun Watson. But defensive tackle, I'm always looking for a guy who, that's been a pro here because I don't really want to go the young man's route because it's obviously we've tried that and that hasn't worked. So I think we have to use a veteran presence there because you need that leadership. You've seen us have lack of leadership on that defense. So the more leaders that you can bring in on that defense, the better that they'll be.
Yeah, I think they need some guy that can step in and immediately kind of raise the level of that line. All right, wide receiver skill set. What are you looking for? What do the Browns? I know they need speed. I want a guy that have Deshaun Watson throw a 5-yard pass and let this guy turn it into a 15, 20-yard gain. That give him the easy throws that we're seeing the Chiefs and even to a certain extent the Eagles and Bengals make.
Well, the thing about that is those guys are hard to find. There is not Jamar Chase that's just out there in the world where you can just throw him the ball and he makes something happen. Like I said, those are something that you got to hit in the draft. You got to find one of those guys that are effective, because if you think about it, Jamar Chase was found in the draft. Well, they don't got Tyreek no more. You can see the difference in that, but you get the point. Like, you need a safety blanket there. And I think, we got Amari Cooper, who's a really good route runner, create separation in his route. You got DPJ, who's a big body receiver who can box out these corners to make plays happen. You just missing that burner or that shifty guy that's in the middle of the field that can cause these defenses to back up. Because right now, if you play the Browns and you're in coverage, you're playing everything tight because you're not really worried about somebody going deep on you. However, if you got a guy that's pretty fast, that's going to back everybody up. And now that opens up the intermediate routes for, Amari Cooper on his routes or DPJ on that famous dig route that he likes to catch.
So as a DB, you're aware of where that guy that has speed is lining up?
Absolutely. So everybody's pointing them out, and we're on high alert.
Tyvis Powell, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Go Browns.
All right, Tyvis Powell from the Browns Radio Network. Always really good stuff, and appreciate his time. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers coming off a nice home win against a undermanned Clippers team yesterday. JB Bickerstaff on what the Cavs did well in that win against the LA Clippers.
It was the defensive end of the floor for sure. It was guys taking individual challenges, but nobody was ever left out on an island. There were so many times where on their penetration, guys were coming over, protecting one another, and then, protecting the guy that was helping someone else. But there was an intensity defensively tonight for sure that, set the tone and, gave me confidence that the guys are ready to go.
Evan Damar right down your blue. JB, I've asked you this a lot. Would you consider this one of the more complete performances you guys have had this season?
Yeah, again, I think, we did the job that we needed to do. I do think, and I don't want to nitpick, but you gave up 42 points in the fourth quarter. You could obviously be better there. But I thought we did do a good job of coming out with the right intent and just doing the job that we needed to do.
Let's welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Chris, Cavs 5-5 last 10. They've been really inconsistent, 5th place in the Eastern Conference. Is there anything to be concerned about? In fairness, they haven't been healthy enough to really fit together.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to be that concerned about when it comes to just like small sample sizes when it comes to this January. Because when the Cavs got the schedule at the very beginning of the season, Dave, they knew January was going to be brutal. It's always the longest road trip of the season because Disney on Ice comes to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. When they came back from that road trip, they played New Orleans earlier than usual at home. Then they had to go back on the road to Memphis, one of the most difficult places to play. So given how many road games there were, given the circumstances surrounding it, given the injuries that they were trying to navigate and the guys that they were trying to work back into their rotation, I think there were some expectations internally that struggles were going to happen in the short term, and they were going to benefit from them eventually in the long term. And I've spent a lot of time over the last week talking to Ricky Rubio and Kevin Love and JB Bickerstaff just about the bigger picture for this team. And they've said from the very beginning, Dave, that they're not trying to be at their best in January and February. It's about being at their best in April and May and in the postseason. And if that means they have to take some lumps along the way to get answers to some questions that they have about themselves, about their rotations, about their lineups, all those different things, then so be it. And I think everything that we've seen here in January is a byproduct of a whole bunch of circumstances coming together to lead to a lot of inconsistency. In saying that, some of the losses that they have had have been pretty inexplicable. At the same time, last night against the Los Angeles Clippers was an evidence of them learning their lesson, especially from the Golden State Warriors game. That was the most embarrassing loss of the season.
Yep, I would agree with you. So D. Wade is back. I know you wrote an article. Take us through what you wrote. You know, he's going to get his chance to show that he is a guy that can help solve that wing question the Cavs have.
If we go all the way back to training camp in the preseason, there was a battle for starting small forward. And everything that I had heard is that the two players that were most likely to win the job out of camp were either Caris LeVert or Dean Wade. And there was a split. Some people in the organization felt like Dean Wade should have been the starting small forward. A low usage, floor spacing, bigger sized wing that can knock down threes at a higher clip. And he doesn't need the ball in his hands to be as effective as maybe he would be comfortable. Caris LeVert won the job, though, coming out of training camp because he performed the best in training camp and he performed the best in the preseason going into the regular season. And JB said, hey, this is the guy that we're going to go with, but this is going to be a fluid decision. And even though Dean didn't win the job coming out of camp, there was still a belief that he was going to be a big part of their plans, a big part of their nightly rotation. And at the time, Dave, that he was starting to get into the flow and he was getting more minutes and he was showing why he was such a good fit, no matter which lineup the Cavs were going to use. He suffered a severe shoulder injury that kept him out for 7 weeks. So they didn't get an opportunity. Of all these different guys that have gotten a real chance to show whether they can or can't be the quote-unquote solution to the small forward problem, and it is still a problem, Dean Wade hasn't gotten that extended opportunity. Lamar Stevens did. Isaac Okoro is getting it right now. Caris LeVert got it at the beginning of the season, and it didn't work out the way that anybody had hoped. And eventually he had to be moved back to the bench. Like, Dean Wade hasn't gotten that long look that those other guys have been able to get. And the Cavs are really, really interested to see what it looks like with Dean Wade as a key member of this second unit, or maybe even a starter at times. And they just haven't gotten that opportunity. And they're committed to giving him more playing time, more opportunities in various lineups to see, like, what do they need to do at the trade deadline, if anything significant? And if he can help answer some of those questions, do some of the things that the Cavs are missing, then maybe they don't have to be as desperate at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would like to see more of him. I think he plays a lot better defense than some people give him credit as well. I mean, he's not a lockdown defender, but he'll get in there and rebound, and he can defend.
Dave, his statistical numbers just on the defensive end of the floor that point to value and impact are some of the best in the entire NBA. Not just the best on the Cavs, but some of the best in the entire NBA. He can guard 3 through 5. He's strong. He's got great feet. He's matched up against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Kyrie Irving and also Giannis. And like the amount of different players that the Cavs trust him to guard, that speaks to just what they believe his potential is as a defensive player. Again, he's not going to get the same kind of recognition as guys who have done it longer, guys who do it on a nightly basis. But his impact metrics on the defensive end of the floor, the Cavs are 7 points per 100 possessions worse on defense when he's off the floor. Again, he can guard multiple positions, bigger body, great feet, rebounds his position. I think he is a better defender than people give him credit for.
Yeah, if you watch him closely, it's kind of like, yeah, this guy can play. I'm with you. I'm intrigued. Let's take a look at the NBA power rankings. This is from NBA.com, most recent one. So 76ers move up to number 1, Celtics number 2, Nuggets 3, Bucks 4. So 3 of the top 4 are in the Eastern Conference. Cavs currently 7th. So offensive rating 114.4, which is 10th. Defensive still 109.7. That's first. Net rating 4.7, which is second. So again, we keep saying, well, they're struggling. They're 5-5 in their last 10. The numbers suggest that when everything evens out, they're going to be right where we thought they might be, fighting for a home playoff game in a home playoff series that first round.
The other thing that I would say, Dave, is that there is no dominant force in the NBA or even in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
Every team has gone through some of these stretches that the Cavs are currently going through. Theirs is happening right now. They're 8-7 so far in the month of January. They've got the 7th best net rating in the month of January of any team in the NBA. Obviously, they need to be better on the road because they're a completely different team at home versus on the road. But like this stretch that the Cavs are currently experiencing is one that Philadelphia went through at the beginning of the season. It's one that Brooklyn went through shortly after KD went out with a knee injury. It's one that the Memphis Grizzlies have gone through, right? It's one that the Boston Celtics have gone through. The Boston Celtics can't beat the Orlando Magic for some reason. So, like, there is no dominant force. There's no, 73-win Golden State Warriors team out there. Every team in the NBA has a weak point and is going through some of these stretches that the Cavs are going through. Theirs feels a little bit different because they haven't earned the benefit of the doubt the same way, and they don't get the same level of respect as a team like Boston who's been there, done that. A team like Milwaukee who's won a championship together. A team like Philadelphia that's gone on deep playoff runs. A team like Brooklyn that has maybe the most talent of any team in the entire NBA. So there are some differences between those kinds of teams, but this that the Cavs are going through is normal in the NBA, especially in January when you can see the All-Star break right around the corner and you're in the middle of maybe the most grueling month of the season.
Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break. Trade deadline is a week from this Thursday. We'll talk a little trade. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Cavs with Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So trade deadline is coming up a week from Thursday. Let's couch this with the Cavs view this as the opening of that window to win a championship this year. So they're not only looking for the short term. All right, having said that, one player every team should dump at the trade deadline, according to the Bleacher Report. Cavaliers, they say Caris LeVert. LeVert, a good player, but probably a better trade chip for the Cavs. The fact he's the most talented player in the mix for the starting small forward gig still hasn't locked down. Speaks to his imperfect fit with the team. Chris, I hesitate to say dumped, but he is on an expiring contract. The question I have to does he fit? Can he help moving forward? But again, they're not looking for just this year. Everybody kind of has to keep that in mind as well.
I think there are two key points, and that's one of them, Dave. That's the first one. The clock isn't ticking as rapidly as it is on a team like Brooklyn or Milwaukee or Philadelphia or Boston. Those teams are in completely different situations. The Cavs are still young. They're still growing. Everybody that's most important to their success, both in the short term and the long term, is under contract through at least another 3 years. And they're all 26 years old or younger. So there is a runway here for organic growth and for them to make internal improvements that can't be made externally. The other thing is, like, Caris LeVert, as questionable as he is as a fit alongside Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, when one of those two guys are out, Caris is very, very important to them. Without him, they don't have enough playmaking and enough shot creation. And if you look at the Cavs' top 5 most successful 5-man lineups, Caris LeVert is in most of those. Okay? So that tells you that in some lineups, in some groupings, he is a fit. It's just he's not a great fit as the starting small forward next to 2 other ball-dominant players in Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. And that makes you wonder, okay, like when you get into a 7-game playoff series and Donovan's going to be on the court a majority of the game and Darius is as well, like what's the fit then with Caris? How many minutes is he going to get then in those kinds of lineups? So it's something that the Cavs really have to consider here as they get closer to the trade deadline. But it's very, very complicated because he is a helpful player for them. He has had an impact for them. It's just, I wonder, is there a better fitting player that's not as good of a pure player as Caris that they can get back if they were to potentially move him?
Yeah, again, it's a tough decision for Kobe Altman. Let's take a look. This is a proposed 3-team trade from Fansided. They have the Cavs getting Alec Burke, Duncan Robinson, and Saddiq Bey. The Heat getting Caris LeVert, the Pistons getting Dylan Windler, and the Heat's 2023 first-round pick. I don't know if I'd take the 3 for the Cavs. I don't know if that's going to get it done from the other 2 perspectives, though.
Look, I mean, it helps Miami. Miami has the worst bench in the entire NBA in terms of bench scoring on a nightly basis. The Cavs, by the way, are 3rd worst in the NBA in that category. So Miami getting somebody like Caris would be very, very helpful to them. That fills their biggest hole. But Detroit is a team that is telling a lot of people that they're not in like clear-cut, blow-it-up sell mode. You know what I mean? Yep. Like they have Bojan Bogdanovic, who could help a lot of teams around the NBA, including the Cavs. But they've attached a high price tag to him because it's not like he's preventing them from reaching their short-term goals. They want to tank. They want to be bad. They're bad with or without him, right? They're bad with or without Alec Burks. And Saddiq Bey is interesting because obviously he has a contract situation and Detroit needs to figure that out. But I'm told that the price tag for somebody like Saddiq Bey is an unprotected first-round pick. Like that's a lot. Not a lot of teams are willing to give that up and then turn around and give him a massive contract. So I just think the players that Detroit has available, quote-unquote available, Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic, Saddiq Bey, I just think they're valued more by Detroit than they are by people around the NBA. And those kinds of players, like I don't know that the Cavs have enough to get them. So looking at that particular 3-team trade, I don't think Detroit would be satisfied giving up those 2 pieces and getting back what they would be getting back. Dylan Windler, who can't play because he can't stay healthy, and then just a first-round pick from the Miami Heat that's going to be between 20 and 30.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Who are some names that you think the Cavs may be able to get for what they can trade or what they would be willing to trade? Some people to listen out for at that trade deadline.
See, that's one of the problems too, Dave, and I think you phrased it properly, because of all the guys that the Cavs can get, they're all flawed. Doug McDermott's going to get played off the court in a playoff series because he can't defend you or he can't defend me. That's happened. Every single place he has been, he can't play in the playoffs. Same thing for Duncan Robinson in the Miami Heat. He's going to get played off the court. Josh Richardson of the San Antonio Spurs is shooting 36% from three-point range. Like, is that a huge upgrade for a team that can't do anything other than shoot the ball? Shoots the ball really, really well. Top 5 in the NBA and made three-pointers. So that is somebody who would help the Cavs. But he can't dribble, he can't pass, and he can't defend. Josh Hart is somebody who I said look out for, and I think he's available from the Portland Trail Blazers. I know that the Cavs like him, and they've liked him in the past, and I think that's somebody that the Cavs would kick the tires on. He has gone through a stretch where he's just like afraid to shoot three-pointers, and he's not shooting them at a high clip. And that's what the Cavs need most. They need three-point shooting, and they need spacing. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a really, really good fit. I think he would make a lot of sense for the Cavs, but they blow up some of their future financial flexibility because of his contract situation. So you can go up and down the list, and you can throw out all these names. And unless you're talking OG Anunoby, who the Cavs don't have enough to get, unless you're talking about Bogdanovich from the Pistons, who the Cavs don't have enough to get, unless you're talking about Jeremy Grant, who could become available from the Blazers, who the Cavs don't have enough to get, you're talking about a flawed player where you're making a decision, am I going to go with offense and lose something defensively, or am I going to go with defense and lose something offensively? So I just don't see the obvious fit for the Cavs that makes me say, yes, they should absolutely trade Karis LeVert and other ancillary pieces to get this guy because he's that much of a difference maker for them. Again, there are names that make sense. Look out for Tim Hardaway Jr. I know that he's near the top of the Cavs list. Look out for Malik Beasley. Look out for Josh Hart. But, like, are any of those guys a clear-cut answer for the Cavs at small forward where they're already limited in assets and they should turn around and give up more assets for those kinds of guys? I have my doubts on that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Again, trade deadline a week from Thursday. Chris Fedor, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Chris.
You got it, Dave. Anytime, man.
All right, Chris Fedor. Make sure you check him out. Always really good Cavs coverage, plain dealer at cleveland.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports4CLE.